Right away, the connection between Elvis and Lisa Marie stood apart from any romantic partnerships or fleeting encounters in his life. Fatherhood turned his world upside down, reshaping his priorities and softening the public persona that so many people recognized. Behind closed doors, the bond was layered, sometimes playful and warm, and other times strained by his busy career and the expectations that came with being a global icon. Lisa Marie often described her father as gentle and attentive, showering her with affection and gifts, determined to give her joy even as he struggled with the pressures of fame and his own personal challenges. Despite their close moments at the Graceland estate, life was never simple for either of them. Extended tours and long periods apart sometimes left Lisa Marie missing her father deeply, while Elvis wrestled with feelings of guilt over missed birthdays or big moments in her young life. Even so, she remained at the center of his world, his confidant in quieter moments, and the person with whom he could drop the mask that the world expected him to wear. For as long as she could remember, Lisa Marie's existence was under a microscope. Everything from her first steps to her private heartbreaks was turned into public discussion, not just among people she knew, but on television, in newspapers, and across the world. Growing up as the only child of one of the most famous figures in music history, she was never just another daughter, never just another teenager or woman trying to find her own way. Instead, every choice she made seemed to symbolize something larger, every misstep magnified, and every success scrutinized. People weighed in on her appearance, her marriages, her career, and her struggles, acting as though her life was a story they were all entitled to edit. Even when she tried to step outside her father's shadow, the world followed her, dragging all the baggage of his fame and legend along. She never had the luxury of privacy, not at home, not at school, not in adulthood. Her efforts to build her own career, discover her identity, or even enjoy quiet moments were dissected and judged over and over, rarely for their own sake, but for what they seemed to represent to the legacy she carried. In many ways, Lisa Marie faced challenges completely unique to her, shaped by an unrelenting spotlight and the sheer impossibility of ever living what most people would call a normal life. From the very first moment he held her, a quiet tenderness softens even the memory these days. Elvis never let go of Lisa Marie, not just in the literal sense, but in a fierce devotion that bloomed in the halls of Graceland. The house, famous for its fans and treasures, played a different role for the father and his little girl. It became a private world where laughter and simple joys hid behind grand doors. Even as the world demanded his voice in every city and the spotlight pressed close, he carved out moments for Lisa Marie. In those rare stilled hours, he eased her uncertainties, offering comfort and reassurance with the strength of their bond. Each giggle, chase, and sleepy story time lived side by side with the chaos of his life, and yet he never let distance loosen the bond. Lisa Marie's presence brought out a bright spark in Elvis, something everyone around him noticed. Their playful games filled rooms with noise and affection, creating an unspoken language all their own. Graceland shifted from celebrity mansion to playground, tailored for a girl who was her father's pride and joy. Even at his busiest, behind designer sunglasses and blinding stage lights, he managed to put Lisa Marie first, nurturing a love that managed to feel both gentle and unbreakable. On a chilly February morning in 1968, a unique moment unfolded in Memphis. Lisa Marie Presley was born to the world-famous singer and performer Elvis Presley and his new bride Priscilla. Across the city, excitement buzzed as news spread of the arrival of Elvis's only child. The couple, just starting their life as a young family, shared a scene that would later become iconic. That very day, a press gathering formed on the steps of the Baptist Hospital. Elvis, easily recognized by his signature dark hair and unmistakable presence, stood close to Priscilla, his adoring gaze fixed on the tiny child cradled in her mother's arms. Priscilla, elegant and composed despite the whirlwind surrounding her, held Lisa Marie with gentle pride. The cameras caught the soft smiles and quiet wonder in Elvis's eyes, the kind of awe only a new father can have on Lucas, and fans saw a softer side of the superstar, watching as he doted on his newborn, every awkward move and hesitant touch showing how new the role of father was to him. The family stood together, capturing a brief moment of tenderness before the world would inevitably claim their attention again. From that day forward, Lisa Marie's life would always be connected to that image, her in her mother's arms, her father close by, a sense of hope and joy wrapped around them. The press, hungry for any piece of the Presley story, relayed the news far and wide, spreading images of this small gathering and turning it into a celebrated moment in popular culture for years to come. Night after night during the pregnancy, the couple pored over a book of baby names, searching for one that felt right. They were not in pursuit of honoring any ancestor or echoing any famous name. Instead, they simply enjoyed the quiet moments together, discussing which names felt lovely or strong or bright. The book became their guide, a nightly ritual as expectation grew. The process was unhurried, thoughtful, and full of small debates about what suited the child they had not yet met. Eventually, they arrived at the name Lisa Marie, a combination of the two names that spoke to them the most out of all the possibilities they read. There was no connection to famous relatives or friends or even an old story. It was selected for the sound and the feeling it gave the parents. Yet, the decision did not come quickly. Some nights one name seemed certain, only to fade by the next evening and be replaced by one they had overlooked. The anticipation shaped these conversations, but the choice stayed personal and light, a reflection of their hope and imagination for the life ahead. Curiously, if the baby had been a boy, the name chosen would have been John Baron Presley, another name discovered in the same book of baby names, highlighting the simple yet meaningful way names became possibilities in their home. That gentle ritual of leafing through pages, briefly considering their favorite names, and agreeing without hurry or pressure, shaped the story behind the name Lisa Marie, a name built from affection, not obligation. Still, there is something touching about the way Elvis took to fatherhood. He was unmistakably proud, always delighted to show off his daughter to friends and visitors. He would look at her with wonder, as if amazed that something so small could belong to him. Yet, when it came time for the hands-on side of being a parent, his confidence faded. He never managed to change a single diaper, which he left, along with the other messy jobs like feeding, to Priscilla. Even a bit of baby food or spit up seemed to unsettle him. There were moments when he looked downright petrified holding his daughter, as if he half believed she might slip from his arms. Priscilla once remarked he looked as if he might drop and break the child, frozen with nervousness. She was more than willing to handle the day-to-day needs, enjoying even the disarray and chaos that came with a baby, while Elvis preferred brief, tender moments and left the rest to her. Their arrangement somehow suited them both, as she was patient and nurturing, and he was loving but uncertain in the face of practical care. He showered his daughter with gifts and affection, but always seemed to shy away from the messier, routine parts of raising a child, letting Priscilla take the lead and handle whatever Elvis couldn't bring himself to do. Despite all his fame and the dazzling world he built, when it came to his daughter, his style of parenting reflected more of a playful and extravagant approach than a hands-on one. He believed that feeding the baby or cleaning up after her was simply not a man's responsibility, leaving the daily tasks to others while choosing to focus on sharing moments of joy and excitement. Whenever he spent time with his child, it often involved games and laughter or surprising her with gifts that made her eyes light up. Presents were his way of expressing affection, from fancy toys to beautiful clothes, making sure she always had whatever she wanted. This lavish generosity became part of his way of being a father, using grand gestures instead of the usual routines many parents follow. The dull or ordinary chores never interested him. Instead, he showed his care through spectacular surprises and playful adventures that mirrored the excitement of his life on stage. He found happiness in watching her delight in each new gift, always wanting to keep their time together fun and special, even if he chose to avoid the more mundane parts of raising a child because he didn't see them as his place. Later in life, Elvis Presley became known not just for his music and charisma, but also for the extravagant ways he showed love to those closest to him. When his daughter Lisa Marie was only 3 years old, he delighted in showering her with lavish gifts, famously starting with a luxurious fur coat, the first in a collection she would go on to own. Even at such a young age, Lisa Marie experienced the generosity that came so effortlessly to him. Years went by. When she was 6 or 7, Elvis continued these gestures in small but significant ways. He would hand over crisp $5 notes whenever she lost a baby tooth, an amount that seemed almost outrageous for a child in the 1970s. These moments became part of a private family lore, quietly capturing the softer side of a figure whose public life was marked by grand performances and worldwide attention. Through all his fame and the chaos that came with it, Elvis found joy in giving memorable and extravagant presents, ensuring that those personal acts of affection left an imprint long after the spotlight faded. From the moment Elvis Presley became a father, his affection for Lisa Marie defined an entire side of him that the world rarely saw. Later in life, when Lisa Marie turned 70, he marked the occasion in grandiose style by purchasing a jet and christening it with her name. This act was more than a gesture. It symbolized how highly he valued his daughter, showing, for everyone to see, the pedestal upon which he placed her. Elvis didn't believe in hiding his feelings, especially when it came to family. Calling Lisa Marie his princess, he often used nicknames that blended his famous swagger with a deep, almost protective sentimentality. Some people on the outside could look at this father-daughter bond and find it overly sweet, or even possessive. A biographer named Burns once observed that Elvis' choice of words and his very public displays of affection revealed a unique blend of love, pride, and an undeniable sense that Lisa Marie belonged to him in a way he toasted openly. Even if others thought it indulgent or old-fashioned, no matter what the world around him thought, Elvis stayed true to his own definition of fatherhood. With him, love wasn't measured out in small, quiet doses, but was an expressive, overflowing thing, sometimes dramatic, and always sincere. His connection to Lisa Marie, symbolized so vividly by naming a jet after her, was forged from the same energy that shaped his music and his unconventional sense of family. The nickname Princess and the proud unveiling of the Lisa Marie jet both spoke to how he set his daughter apart, showing the world his unfiltered devotion. His refusal to fit into others' ideas of how a father should behave, preferring instead to show love in bold, unmistakable gestures. Often when thinking about the ways that gifts and indulgence define their relationship, what stands out is the extravagant gesture with the Harley-Davidson golf cart, thoughtfully engraved just for her even before she began school. That was more than a simple present. It showed a desire to give a sense of excitement and individuality in her young world. One can almost picture the driveway where she first rode it, her name sparkling in sunlight, her father nearby enjoying her delight. Moments like these extended far beyond just material gifts. With his fame and fortune, he had access to experiences very few could imagine, and he made it a habit to transform everyday events into private adventures. Renting out entire movie theaters became a way for them to watch films together without distractions from crowds, turning an ordinary night out into something special and intimate. Even grander, he would sometimes rent out amusement parks, filling the space with just the sounds of their laughter and joy, indulging any wish for fun and adventure carving out time together away from the public eye. Nothing seemed off limits. Once, in a whimsical and remarkable act, he arranged to fly her to Utah, just so she could play in the snow, even if only for a few brief minutes, capturing the sense of wonder and bending reality to match childhood dreams. These acts of lavishness, though extraordinary, also spoke to a desire to escape the routines of fame and share rare, uninterrupted moments of happiness between father and daughter, shaping memories that reached far beyond the surface of riches and privilege. After her 6th birthday, her parents' divorce changed her world, and she moved with her mother to Pacific Palisades, just down the road from Graceland. In 1978, Priscilla recalled that, even after the divorce, she and Lisa Marie often visited Graceland as if nothing had changed between her and Elvis. They still hugged, still cared for each other, and the sense of family never faded. Priscilla explained that Elvis and she always showed respect, and there were no arguments or bitterness during visits. This helped Lisa Marie feel that her life was still stable and loving despite the separation. Priscilla and Elvis would assure Lisa by saying things like, "Mommy said this," or "Daddy said that," sharing decisions and keeping an open, warm attitude. Visits to Graceland after the divorce seemed more like a continuation than a break, and the connection between Elvis, Priscilla, and Lisa Marie remained tender. The atmosphere between Priscilla and Elvis focused on support and unity, which made it easier for Lisa to feel safe and cared about throughout the changes in her family life. Elvis and Priscilla's devotion to their daughter meant that, even when their marriage ended, their role as parents continued in harmony. Meanwhile, the intricate relationship between Elvis Presley and Linda Thompson was marked by subtle tensions, especially regarding Elvis' family dynamics. There was a particular incident that Linda recounted, shedding light on her place within Elvis's inner circle and the complexities that arose from his previous marriage. Linda, who lived with Elvis during the later years of his life, shared how on one occasion Lisa Marie, Elvis' daughter, confided to her that Priscilla Presley did not like Linda very much. Linda's reaction was one of sadness, not only for her own position, but perhaps also out of empathy for Lisa Marie, who seemed caught in the web of adult relationships and feelings. Linda remembered in her biography that she took this moment to respond thoughtfully to the young Lisa Marie, remarking that it was very sad to hear such sentiments. With a touch of irony, Linda observed that while tension simmered between her and Priscilla, Elvis had always been someone who actively encouraged his daughter to speak her mind openly to others. This encouragement for Lisa Marie to express herself freely set up situations in which even uncomfortable truths, like Priscilla's strained feelings toward Linda, would surface clearly. As a result, the household became a space where honest emotions could rise to the surface, for better or worse, and where every individual involved had to navigate the directness and candor that Elvis had inspired in his daughter. Even years after, the words spoken by Lisa Marie Presley give a vivid and heartfelt picture of her relationship with Elvis Presley. She described him as protective, always caring, and deeply attentive to her needs and emotions. His role as a father was not distant or cold, but rather full of warmth and affection. Lisa Marie remembered how she never doubted how much she was loved. Although love is not always easy to find or keep, with Elvis, it was obvious to her even as a child. He watched over her carefully, always making her feel special and safe. His adoration was not one-sided. Lisa Marie felt the bond was very much mutual, both giving and receiving love in ways that left strong impressions throughout her life. She recalled moments when his eyes were always on her, looking out for her best interests, making sure she knew that she mattered most to him. His love and attention provided her comfort and confidence, teaching her about connection that could stand against pressures from outside their family. There was an understanding between them, one built on experiences shared in private moments, moments that defined the deep relationship they had. This sense of being cherished by her father gave Lisa Marie a foundation she always carried with her, no matter how the world around them might change. And in her own words, it was something truly rare and cherished. Once she got a little older, bath time became a unique tradition in their household because she would only take a bath without fuss when her father was involved. No matter how much her mother or others tried to persuade her, she enjoyed playing games and resisting their efforts just for the fun of it. However, everything changed as soon as her father stepped in. He would gently pick her up, carry her to the bathroom, and set her down into the tub. And with that, all her mischief would immediately vanish. Unlike with anyone else, she never tried to argue or protest with her father. The moment he got involved, she simply did as she was told and settled into her bath, letting the games come to an end. The comfort and security she felt in those moments created a sense of trust that made these bath times special. She remembered these moments as the times her father alone could bring calm to her playful resistance, and it was clear that his gentle authority carried weight in their household. Later, when summer came or school holidays rolled around, there was a certain electricity in the air, because it meant that time at Graceland with Elvis was about to begin. These visits were different from typical family days. For a daughter who usually saw Elvis only during breaks from school, the days at Graceland were bursting with moments of mischief and laughter. Graceland itself became a stage for their adventures, a place that felt far away from the constraints of everyday life. Elvis delighted in making the time special, turning ordinary afternoons into memories that would last forever. Sometimes Elvis would go a step further and rent out adventure parks such as Liberty Land. Days there started early and lasted as long as the fun held out. The air buzzed with excitement as Elvis and his daughter, joined by his girlfriends Linda Thompson and Ginger Alden, spent the entire day going from one roller coaster to the next. Riding the coasters again and again, they threw themselves into pure amusement, sometimes pausing only to catch their breath or laugh about a wild loop. The world seemed to shrink to just the thrill of the rides and the playful company. These were not quiet, restrained outings, but full-blown escapades, bursting with the kind of joy that comes from breaking the rules just a little, for making the most out of the rare and precious time together. At Graceland, boundaries melted away, and with each visit, the sense of mischief grew, woven into every shared secret and every echo of laughter down the hallways. Sometimes, life at Graceland felt like living in a dream. Every shopping trip turned into an adventure, with Elvis eager to buy Lisa Marie whatever caught her eye. There was no limit, no request too great, no desire left unanswered. She was spoiled, but not just with gifts. Her father's affection ran even deeper. Elvis never set strict boundaries, letting her get away with nearly anything. While he slept through much of the day, Lisa Marie and her friends roamed the halls of Graceland like it was their personal playground. She knew, without a doubt, that none of the staff would challenge her. Anyone who tried to rein her in faced the threat of losing their job. That freedom, unchecked and wild, made her a force to be reckoned with, a self-described terror in those early years, a fact she admits with a bit of embarrassment later on. Her mother, Priscilla, was nothing like Elvis in this respect. She enforced a clear set of rules, expecting Lisa Marie to follow them. This stark difference only added to the confusion Lisa Marie felt growing up, caught between the indulgent, loving softness of her father and the firm, disciplined structure her mother demanded. The push and pull between leniency and strictness shaped not just her childhood adventures, but also left her wondering about the balance between freedom and boundaries. After a day on stage or in the studio, the place where Elvis Presley truly relaxed was his private quarters upstairs at Graceland. This area was unlike the rest of the mansion, set apart as a sanctuary for him and his daughter. It was not just a series of rooms, but a hidden world where the two of them spent many cherished hours away from the crowds and constant attention. Only a handful were ever invited into this part of the house, both during Elvis's lifetime and now, as these rooms remain closed to the public. In these upper rooms, Elvis and his daughter played together, creating memories filled with laughter and intimacy that no one else could share. The bond between father and daughter grew deeper every day as they spent quality time together, watching TV on lazy afternoons or talking about everything and nothing at all. These moments in the private quarters meant Elvis was not the superstar, but simply a devoted father. Even the echoes of their togetherness remained protected, with those private rooms left undisturbed, holding the secrets of their heartfelt connection and their time together, setting them apart from the outside world in a way most people could only imagine. Whenever Lisa Marie stayed at Graceland, the place came alive with laughter and joy. Elvis Presley, known around the world for his music, found a different kind of happiness when he was with his daughter. He didn't just watch from a distance. Instead, he joined in every game and activity. They would run through the hallways, their footsteps echoing off the grand walls, and sometimes venture outside, enjoying fresh air and sunshine in the big backyard. Elvis always made sure their time together was filled with play. They talked about anything and everything, sharing little jokes, secrets, and stories. For Elvis, those moments weren't about being a superstar, but about being a dad. He cherished the times he could laugh, relax, and simply be himself around Lisa Marie. She brought out the softer side of him, a side that enjoyed quiet talks as much as silly games. Even the staff noticed how the mood lifted with her presence. There was a lightness and ease in the air. No visit felt the same when Lisa Marie was away. There was a lively energy in Graceland that disappeared when she left. Elvis looked forward to her visits, knowing they would bring a special warmth to the house. Their connection reminded everyone around them that family moments are some of the most precious, filled with laughter, play, and the comfort of each other's company. Meanwhile, growing up between two such different households shaped Lisa Marie's early life in complicated ways. On one side, Elvis Presley offered her a world without many limits. He wanted to see her smile and would grant her wishes easily, sometimes even before she could voice them. This went beyond the usual treats or gifts most children expect. Elvis felt joy in making Lisa Marie happy, surrounding her with luxuries and experiences other kids could only dream about. However, going to her mother's home meant learning about a different way of living. Priscilla was careful about teaching her daughter responsibility, hoping to instill a sense of discipline and self-restraint. She sometimes had to make choices that stood in stark contrast to Elvis's more indulgent ways, drawing clearer boundaries and trying to build habits that would prepare Lisa Marie for the real world outside Graceland's gates. Navigating between these two styles wasn't easy for Lisa Marie, especially since she was still unpacking who she wanted to become. One home showered her with adoration and immediate rewards, while the other offered less material comfort but reminded her about duty and making mindful decisions. By the time she turned 9, these contrasts became especially challenging, leaving her to wonder which rules to follow and how to balance what she wanted with what she needed. Nevertheless, life at Graceland was much easier for Lisa Marie Presley compared to the reality she faced at her mother's home. At Graceland, Lisa Marie was surrounded by staff and family and felt constantly celebrated, almost as if she was on an endless holiday. The days were filled with joy, a lack of obligation, and a sense of freedom that made her comfortable and happy. When she went to live with her mother, however, everything changed. The environment was stricter, and there were more rules to follow, which made every day feel very different from what she was used to. Her mother had parenting responsibilities that demanded discipline and structure. This brought out a noticeable contrast to the indulgent and carefree atmosphere at Graceland. Lisa Marie had trouble adjusting to these new expectations, since life at her father's home hardly prepared her for order and routine. Each return to her mother's home made the differences in parenting styles clear, creating challenges for Lisa Marie as she tried to figure out how to fit into her new surroundings and what was expected of her. At her father's home, responsibilities seemed almost non-existent, and she could relax or have fun whenever she pleased. But her mother expected her to adapt to rules and a more predictable way of living. This intense highlight of different parenting styles shaped her childhood experience and added complicated feelings about home life and family. Despite the glamorous public life surrounding her family, Priscilla faced significant challenges in shaping her daughter's character and habits. She took her responsibilities very seriously, ensuring Lisa Marie went to school every single day, trying to instill a sense of right and wrong, and teaching her about handling money even when the circumstances were far from normal. The situation was already difficult due to the divorce, but everything was amplified by the sheer fame and wealth that her former husband enjoyed. Lisa Marie found her mother's rules restrictive and reacted by rebelling, craving the freedoms she experienced with her father. Time with Elvis at Graceland was the opposite of Priscilla's discipline. There, chaos reigned, and almost any desire could be satisfied instantly. Lisa Marie herself described Graceland as a place where she felt the calmest and safest, away from expectations and rules, in a world where her wishes were often granted right away. In contrast, Priscilla continued her efforts to provide boundaries and structure, even when that meant being the stricter parent and sometimes causing tension in her relationship with her daughter. Navigating these two extremes, strict guidance at home with Priscilla, unbounded indulgence with Elvis, was a daily test for both mother and daughter, making every decision feel heavier when set against the backdrop of wealth, attention, and fear. Unpredictable world they inhabited. Despite the glamour and attention that surrounded Elvis Presley, the family life behind the scenes brought different challenges, especially when it came to raising a child in an unusual environment. Priscilla found herself constantly working against the effects of Elvis's indulgence on their daughter. The atmosphere in their home was colored by Elvis' generous nature, which shaped their daughter's expectations and behaviors. Priscilla recounted how she struggled to balance the impact of these gestures. She pointed out that before Elvis died, and even more so afterwards, the challenge of molding her daughter's character grew. Looking back, Priscilla remembered how her daughter didn't see herself as spoiled, interpreting her father's generosity not as excess but as pure love. Priscilla herself understood that while their daughter appreciated what Elvis gave her, there were still moments when she might have acted up. These instances weren't about ingratitude, but a reflection of the world she'd grown up in, where everyone around her leapt to meet the star's slightest wish. According to Priscilla, this had an ongoing effect on their daughter. She became so accustomed to a world in which people obeyed her father instantly that it took her a long time to realize that telling others what to do was not the norm. Overcoming these habits was a process that involved both self-awareness and patience, as she slowly navigated a reality far from the unique bubble she had been raised in. Interestingly, Elvis showed a deep fascination with religion, which became a quiet but powerful part of his private world. In his main bedroom, tucked away in a little office, he kept an entire room set aside for religious study. This special place was filled only with books about religion, reflecting his intense curiosity about spiritual matters. He didn't just focus on one faith, but looked at many kinds of religious beliefs, collecting explanations and teachings from various traditions. This wasn't a casual hobby. Elvis surrounded himself with volumes to find answers and comfort. According to Lisa Marie, his daughter, Elvis was always searching for love and peace through these books. She shared in an interview with British television that she believed his search was constant, almost like he needed those books and their words as a steady source of hope or understanding. The presence of these books points to a man who craved connection and meaning beyond the stage lights and fame. While many saw him as a confident superstar, behind closed doors his shelves told another story, one that was quieter and filled with questions about the world and his place in it. His devotion to reading about religion set him apart, showing an inner life that was curious and sincere. For Elvis, the comfort he looked for wasn't found in material things, but in the search itself, in paging through book after book, never satisfied with simple answers, but trusting that peace was out there, written somewhere among the chapters. After Elvis Presley passed away, his daughter Lisa Marie and his ex-wife Priscilla found a different path in life that set them apart from their earlier years. Although they had not been regular churchgoers when Elvis was alive, a major change came after his death. Lisa Marie and her mother both got involved with the Church of Scientology, becoming dedicated members for 3 decades. This new spiritual community played an important role in their personal lives, providing not only guidance but also a sense of belonging. Lisa Marie's involvement in the church brought profound changes, influencing major life decisions. It was during her active years in the organization that she met Danny Keough. Their meeting and marriage both happened within the context of Scientology, making Danny a key figure in Lisa Marie's life and her first and longest-lasting husband. Elvis never met Danny, as all of this happened after his passing. Scientology, therefore, became deeply linked to their family's story, shaping Lisa Marie's adult life, relationships, and experiences in ways that Elvis Presley could never have imagined. Their connection to the church lasted for 30 years, weaving itself into Lisa Marie's identity and choices. But it all began only after the legendary singer was gone, making it a chapter of the Presley family that was entirely separate from Elvis himself. Although she was only 9 years old, she watched her father closely, catching glimpses of his self-destructive patterns even at that young age. While their relationship felt close, almost magical, there lingered a sense that she had to be the caretaker, reversing the usual role between parent and child. The excitement and love she felt from him filled their home, but so did a troubling sense of unpredictability. Sometimes she would see him reach for handfuls of pills without really knowing what they were or why he needed them so badly. The image of her father in these moments stuck in her memory. Even as she could not make sense of it all, his behavior would shift, sometimes in a heartbeat, from lively and indulgent to withdrawn or unpredictable, affected by whatever he had just taken. If he noticed her watching, he would straighten up and try to present himself as in control. But the cracks in the surface were plain to her, even then. Through a child's eyes, she understood something was wrong, though she could not have named it. Even covered by the affection and warmth he showed her, an underlying thread of worry tied her to him, and she carried the heavy feeling that she needed to try to look after her father, not just enjoy being his daughter. It was a mix of loving chaos and responsibility shaped forever by seeing those private, troubled moments up close. Sometimes in those quiet nights he would come to her doorway while she watched TV, the light flickering over his familiar face, and he'd nearly stumble or lose his balance right there. She would rush instinctively to reach for him, arms out to break his fall, wanting nothing more than to keep him upright and safe. The worry didn't leave her when these things happened. Lisa Marie, young and knowing too much, would look into his eyes and ask with a tone that wavered between fear and hope, "You're not going to die, are you?" He would answer no, every single time, with a gentle certainty that made her believe him, if only for a little while. Even with those reassurances, the memory of his unsteady steps stayed with her, a shadow in the hallway, pressing on her heart. More than once, doubt got the better of her, and she found herself quietly creeping toward his room later, driven by the urge to check on him. There she would sometimes find him, not the strong father from her memories, but a man in a bad state, vulnerable in a way only she seemed to see. The fear was always there, quietly gnawing at her when he lost his balance, when his answer echoed in her head, fighting against the reality she witnessed. There were several times when she could not rest until she saw with her own eyes that he was breathing, alive for another day, even as those moments chipped away at her childhood calm, leaving worry pressed around her like an old blanket. Suddenly, everything changed for Lisa Marie one early morning when she was 9. While staying over at her father's house, she couldn't sleep and found herself wandering the hallways in the quiet darkness around 4 in the morning. Elvis noticed her awake at this strange hour, saw her in the hall, approached, kissed her gently, and lovingly sent her back to bed. That moment, so simple and filled with warmth, ended up being their last interaction. Later that morning, after Lisa Marie had gone back to bed, confusion erupted after Elvis was found unresponsive on the bathroom floor of his bedroom. The chaos and noise swept through the house, waking Lisa Marie. Not understanding what was happening, she went in search of the commotion and found herself in the midst of a tragic scene. Elvis' girlfriend, Linda Thompson, was desperately trying to revive him. The sight of the frantic attempts to save her father made a terrible impression on Lisa Marie. Witnessing such a shocking and sorrowful moment at a young age became a memory etched deeply in her mind, shaping her understanding of loss and forever linking her last sweet moment with her father to the heartache and trauma of his passing. Despite watching her father, Elvis Presley, die so jung, Lisa Marie Presley's thoughts often turned to her own health and what she had inherited from his side of the family. She remembered how the Presley men died at comparatively early ages and how their choices, especially Elvis's widely reported unhealthy habits, loomed over her. As she grew older and started to think about becoming a parent herself, these worries grew even stronger. Lisa Marie shared that she became extra careful about her own lifestyle, aware of the risks that came with her family's history. She felt a responsibility not just to herself, but to her future children, to avoid repeating any unhealthy patterns. Some people always imagined Elvis sitting down to piles of fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches, but Lisa Marie insisted that as a child, she never actually saw him eat those. It was only much later, as an adult, and long after her father's death, that she tried his famous sandwich for the first time, and even then, she only took a single bite. The legend of her father's choices hovered over her life, nudging her to take another path, one that favored health and caution, especially with the shadow of her family's early losses always present. Even as she stood beneath the shadow of fame cast by her famous father, she realized she would never truly match the legend he embodied. Taking up her own singing career brought a different kind of pressure. The anticipation, the constant comparison, and the sense that one must live up to someone else's accomplishments all weighed heavily on her. Rather than becoming overwhelmed or determined to outshine him, she found a different path. She decided not to compete with the legacy, but to live with it as part of her own journey. This choice allowed her to express herself honestly in her music and in her personal life. Instead of struggling to fit into a mold or strive for impossible expectations, she embraced the idea that her father's achievements would always be a part of her story, but not the whole story. This change in perspective freed her from fears of not measuring up, allowing her to enjoy her own success. Over time, she found fulfillment by being authentic and accepting her unique voice, not as a copy or continuation of what had come before, but as something wholly her own. As people came to recognize her talent for what it was, she grew more confident and comfortable in her career. The pressure melted away, replaced by a sense of peace, knowing that her path did not have to be the same as his, and that simply living with his legacy, rather than against it or in service to it, would always serve her best. Yet, behind the public tours of Graceland and the stories shared with the world, it is in her songwriting, where the real depth of emotion emerges. Instead of only showing the glamorous or celebrated parts of being the daughter of Elvis Presley, her songs give voice to the weight she carried. In songs like I Love You Because, she reaches for a connection that goes beyond history and fame, exploring those quiet, aching moments of longing for a father who was always more than a celebrity. When she performed duets with her father's old recordings, the sound felt layered with both pride and a heavy sense of loss, as her own voice intertwined with his. Through these songs, he explored questions about identity and belonging, and the torment of always being measured against a larger-than-life figure who still stood in the shadow of her every lyric. Rather than offering neat answers, her music lets listeners hear echoes of conflict and vulnerability. The spotlight might have followed her into adulthood, but her recordings hold something more private and raw, capturing the experience of grief as well as love through each line she wrote. However, being the only child of Elvis Presley placed her in a unique position in his world, capturing all of his attention and affection. As the apple of his eye, she quickly became his princess, surrounded by the warmth and devotion of both of her parents, especially during her earliest years at Graceland. That grand house was never just an estate or a museum of stardom to her, but a home filled with laughter, love, and the sense of safety that comes from being the center of her parents' universe. Her first 4 years, spent immersed in this bubble of family adoration, laid the foundation for her sense of self and belonging. Yet, when her parents divorced, her world gently split in two. Living with her mother meant adjusting to a new set of expectations and routines, rules that sometimes felt stricter or less magical than what she experienced at Graceland. Every visit back to Elvis was a return to a space where boundaries blurred, where he, perhaps longing to recapture some of his own lost childhood, would indulge her with ease, turning Graceland into a wonderland and playground. In that space, every room could become a stage, every moment an opportunity for Elvis to shower his only child with attention, gifts, and experiences that made her feel cherished. For her, the contrast between her two homes was apparent, and the freedom and joy of her father's house was the life she deeply preferred. Graceland was not just where her father lived, but where she could share his imagination, adventures, and unconditional love, making memories that shaped her understanding of family and belonging. Growing up surrounded by poverty shaped the way Elvis Presley saw the world, and it helped create such a powerful bond between him and his mother that it defined how he treated the people he loved for the rest of his life. Generosity became second nature to him, not out of obligation, but as a deep expression of love. He bought homes, clothes, and cars for his parents, lifting them out of hardship whenever he could because he wanted to protect them from ever feeling the kind of need he had known. When his own daughter came into his life, the instinct only deepened. He never questioned giving her everything she wished for or needed, sometimes simply because she looked at something with interest. Providing for her brought him joy rather than guilt. The lavish gifts, whether small trinkets or grand gestures, felt like a natural part of caring for the person he adored the most. Elvis surrounded the people he loved with comfort and security, believing that there was no limit on how much he could give. His need to share stemmed from childhood memories and the warm closeness he had shared with his mother, creating a legacy of giving that focused on the happiness of those closest to his heart, making sure that the struggles of his own upbringing would not be their story. Without boundaries, and with a life defined by constant attention and wealth, indulgence became a form of love for Elvis Presley, especially in how he treated his daughter, Lisa Marie. Rather than imposing strict rules or discipline, he chose to express his affection through generous gifts and imaginative adventures, believing that endless surprises and material pleasures would strengthen their bond. For Lisa Marie, these moments created a sense of wonder and privilege, but also blurred the line between affection and excess. Growing up surrounded by fame and opulence, She learned early on that her father's way of caring often meant letting her do as she pleased, never saying no, and ensuring she never felt deprived. Yet this abundance, so enchanting as a child, could carry unseen consequences, offering comfort, while also making it harder to navigate boundaries later in life. The passing of Graceland from father to daughter became a symbol of this inheritance, both material and emotional. The iconic estate, rich in memories and history, is the place where Lisa Marie feels closest to her father's spirit. Yet it is also the location of profound sorrow, as she was present during his final moments. Even as an adult, she finds herself wrestling with the shadow cast by his death, feeling both the immense weight of his legacy and the personal loss that no amount of fame or fortune can heal. To her, Graceland remains a bittersweet monument, filled with reminders of a father who, for the world, was a legend, but for her, embodied the complicated mix of generosity, absence, and vulnerability that shaped her life. After stepping inside Graceland, Lisa Marie always describes the house as filled with her father's presence, a feeling so strong that sometimes it is almost overwhelming for her. The atmosphere shifts depending on the mood Elvis left behind. Sometimes the place feels grand and powerful, as if the energy he had on stage still hangs in the air, echoing through the hallways and room. At times there is a darker current, one that perhaps recalls the more troubled periods of his life, and she can sense that as much as the lighter times. Despite any heaviness, Lisa Marie only has positive memories when she talks about her father. Graceland was a place of fun and laughter for her. Energy swirled through the home, and Elvis, with his natural charisma, was mischievous, always stirring things up and delighting those around him. Evenings often held surprises, boisterous games, sudden music, or playful pranks. Every day around Elvis was filled with excitement. The house was never quiet or dull. Instead, it buzzed with his larger-than-life spirit. For Lisa Marie, returning to Graceland is not just about nostalgia or history. It is about revisiting an environment that pulsed with her father's joy and vibrant energy, a feeling that never fully leaves no matter how much time has passed. Although the world knows Elvis Presley as an icon, Lisa Marie remembers him differently, marked by the complications of a childhood shaped by his fame, absence, and sudden loss. Losing her father at such a young age left her with a muddle of memories, some brief flashes of warmth or laughter, others shadowed with confusion and longing. On one hand, there is the deep love a daughter feels for her father, but also the pain from time lost, questions never asked, and the public's constant gaze that intensified after his death. Being his only child gave Lisa Marie a special place in his heart, yet it placed a heavy burden on her own, making it difficult to separate her own identity from his looming legend. Even as she formed her own family, built her own career, and lived in the shadow of Graceland and all that came with it, the feelings surrounding their relationship refused to settle into something simple. The process of growing up was shaped by echoes of his presence and the empty spaces left by his absence, filling her life with reminders of what she had and what she lost. This push and pull between pride, grief, and confusion colors almost every step she takes, leaving even the smallest everyday details tinged by his distant, yet ever-present influence.